Hello, and welcome to the Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown.
The podcast where we watch 31 horror movies throughout the hallowed month of October.
Ranging from the critically acclaimed to film school projects gone gruesomely awry.
And we take them all way too seriously.
I'm your host, Mike Hummel.
And I'm your host, Sully Hummel.
Now warning, we use a ghoulish number of spoilers, so watch the movies first.
Second warning, we don't know anything about anything, so don't take us seriously while we take these movies seriously. It is day 31.
Oh no! It is take 31 of this sentence.
And we are doing our final Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown.
That was perfectly executed. I mean...
There are too many H words and there's no rhyme or reason to what order you originally put them in. Explain.
It's Hamumu.
Uh-huh.
And it's
That's
Halloween.
The one, I always get that one right.
Halloween is the holiday in question.
Uh-huh.
We're at home, watching horror movies, and dancing to folk music silently.
I understand why you chose each of the H words, but there's no logic to the order in which you put them.
I put them in the right order.
Yeah, well, I can never put them in the right order. So it's day 31, and we're watching the final Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown movie. Did I do it right?
Yeah.
Ha! That movie happens to be The Wailing.
The Wailing! 2016.
From 2016. Tell us why we picked this movie.
This movie is very high up on lists of best movies of recent times. It is a Korean film, which is something we have not done yet this month, so check.
Okay. It was subtitled.
It was subtitled. We didn't learn Korean to watch it.
I was trying to say it wasn't done in English.
Okay. Because sometimes the Italian movies are done in English, I know. But no, this one was done in Korean.
It wasn't dubbed or anything. It was, we listened to it in Korean with English subtitles.
And it's supposed to be good. A lot of people saying great things. And now we have seen it. And I don't think we can really tell you what we saw.
I can tell you that it was the longest movie we watched all month.
Yes, by far, at 2 hours and 40 minutes in length.
It was very long.
Early-ish on, I don't know, several hours into it, I was feeling like I'm liking this. It doesn't feel like I'm watching a movie. It feels like I'm binging a series on Netflix.
I had the exact same thought, that it felt like I was watching all of a made-for-TV series all at once.
Yeah, it just goes and goes. And the thing is, it's really long, but a ton of stuff happens in that time. I mean, I don't know that the plot's that complicated, but just lots of individual events. When we stopped it at some point, we had like an hour to go, and it felt like we had already seen a million different individual things happen.
Yes, I was shocked at how much time was left, given how much we had already seen. But at the same time, not, like, annoyed at how much time was left.
Yeah.
Like, I was okay with it, which I want to talk about again. I want to come back to that idea, because at the time, I wasn't annoyed that there were still 40 minutes left.
I see. In summary, as best I can do for this is a movie about a cop who is investigating killings that are happening in this little village. And the killings are very strange because people get a really bad rash and then they go nuts and kill their family. And, you know, why is that happening? And he goes down this path of pursuing it, which involves, well, actually what it really involves is his daughter getting sick with this disease. And so, oh no, he's got to deal with that. That's the main thrust of the whole movie. And he talks to his shaman, and he is pursuing the mysterious Japanese man who has moved into town that everybody seems to not like. And then there's other people that are involved, and it's confusing and complicated, and that's about as summarized as I can do that.
Yeah. After this movie, I went to IMDb and started reading what other people thought.
Me too.
Because particularly with films based in cultures have very little familiarity with. I like to get the perspective of other people to see if like the thing that I noticed was something that was a thing or something that was a thing because I was watching it through my very American filter.
Sure.
So I wanted to see like what were people saying about this movie? And it feels like people are very divided between thinking this is an amazing movie, like 9s and 10s all over IMDb.
Sure, yeah.
Or very low scores like 1s and 3s because they don't like it at all.
Yeah, because it's too long, it goes nowhere, it doesn't give you answers. And that's the tricky thing about this movie is it is a Korean movie, so we're already out of our depth and we don't understand a lot of the nuance in it.
Because I felt at the end of it, I was like, oh, that didn't wrap anything up. I have no idea what I was supposed to learn from this. And I was not sure if it was because the story was done poorly or because I just didn't understand the explanations.
And that's what the reviews made me feel better about, is that other people were like, this is a very open-ended movie that nobody understands. Like, the director is very cagey about what it all means, even. Like, so it is a weird, trippy movie. One guy compared it to the David Lynch movie Mulholland Drive, so that was like, oh, okay, we don't have to understand this.
Other people compared it to The Witch.
The Vivitch,
which was similar in style and had that like really intense horror drama, but didn't really explain exactly what was going on and had some of the same like a lot of religious overtones, but that weren't ever really tied together to say, this is what we're trying to say. It was just, here's some stuff. What does it make you think about?
And that's something in this movie, because this movie feels like it explains something at the end, and I don't feel like that explanation even makes sense with everything we've seen. So I think that's part of the lynchiness.
Yeah, I definitely read a review where somebody was saying, you and I read the same one where they compared it to an MC Escher drawing where like you start to figure out a piece of it, but that piece of it doesn't fit with the rest of it. Yeah. And then you go figure out a different piece, but it doesn't fit with the rest of it either.
Sure.
Which I suppose is a style. I mean, MC Escher has a very distinct artistic style that either you're going to like or you're going to not like. And it seems people either really like it or really don't like it.
Yeah. It's got a lot going on. It's one of those things where I didn't understand it, but I can tell that there's something there, as opposed to didn't understand it because it's stupid.
I find that interesting that you say that, because I think I came down more on the other side, where I feel like there was a lot of stuff there.
And they threw it all at the wall.
Right? And it was well done. Like, I enjoyed watching this movie. It was dramatic, and, they used rain, and they used
lots of
the forest and the mountains and all of these homes. Like, they, just the style of the decorating and everything was used so well. And like this kind of rural South Korean countryside. It was beautiful in a very like dark, disturbing way. And I didn't mind, like, I think that there was some complaints about all the, the wailing, the screaming, like there was lots of screaming.
There was lots of screaming.
And that was one of those moments where I'm like, especially the first time it was happening, and he shows up at the crime scene and there are like 3 or 4 people just like in hysterics over what happened. And it was tragic, yes. But, like, take those people away.
Well, one of them was being taken away as he arrived, but yeah.
As he arrived very late because he stopped to have breakfast first.
That was the whole thing.
Anyway, I didn't mind the screaming. I didn't mind the, like, Exorcist-style acting that the little girl was doing. I actually really thought it was well done.
Super good.
So there was a lot that I enjoyed about watching this movie. But I don't feel like it really said anything. Like, I don't
think that's the case. Like, for me, I don't get it, but it's there. It's on the tip of my tongue is what it is.
Yeah. And that's very, very possible. I don't know. Part of it is that it's almost 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And part of the almost 3 hours longness of it is that there were so many different chunks of movies in it. Like, at the beginning, I had to remind myself, again, it's the cultural thing where I'm like reading it through a filter and I, have to be careful of like, this isn't necessarily, not all movies about cops that we make in America illustrate competent cop behavior, right? Like,
yep.
I've seen movies where Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart are cops. That's not an accurate portrayal of the American justice system.
Yeah.
So I had to remind myself, these cops are not accurately representing cops in South Korea.
Yes, they were surprisingly goofball Keystone cops.
It was ridiculous, and they were terrible at their jobs.
It felt to me like the first third of the movie had a lot of that comedy slapstick silliness, and then it just disappeared for the rest of the movie, and it was deadly serious.
Which makes me wonder, why?
I don't
Why? Know. And then about, halfway through the movie, 2/3 of the way through the movie, suddenly there's a zombie.
Yeah.
A single zombie.
Just one, and it turns out just one zombie is enough.
All that was needed. That zombie, it took those 6 guys to deal with that zombie. It was intense. He bites somebody, several somebodies, I think. And I was like, oh, okay. I was on board with the zombie thing because the Japanese man raised him from the dead. Fine, we've created zombies. I don't know why, but we've done it. But then it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I don't understand where so many parts go.
Why was there a zombie in the middle of this movie? It was completely unnecessary. And if they had taken that whole scene out, it would have been like 15 minutes shorter.
Yeah, that would have been a good plan.
I don't understand why it was there. So I think that's why I sort of feel like, you know what it is? As a writer, and I assume as a screenwriter and as a movie maker, you have to learn to kill your darlings.
Yes.
And I do not feel like the darlings were killed in the making of this movie.
Wow,
No darlings.
Way to not like those people.
No darlings were killed in the making of this movie.
It did feel definitely that it didn't need to be 3 hours long.
No.
There was a lot of excess.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of artistry on display, and this is part of why I feel like the story's got something to it, is like something I noted early on is how insanely chaotic a lot of the shots were. Like, they'd be showing you a crime scene and everything was just a mess. Like, you've seen messes in movies, but not like this. Like
this was the opposite of the messes we saw in The Grudge, which was basically just a few pieces of crumpled newspaper and a juice box.
This was just absolute wreck. And like, the whole time they're showing the shot is the amount of time it takes me to interpret what I'm seeing,
right,
let alone find whatever details they're trying to point me at. I'm like, I can't. I'm working on what those shoes are doing there. Like, it's a mess. And there's tons of that. And like, even, they show the ceiling in the ritual room and it's got all the crisscrossing clotheslines up there. And just everything is so overwhelming and chaotic. And that's something artistic. I don't know what they're going for exactly, but it did something.
It definitely contributed to the chaotic feel of the movie and the atmosphere of it. I absolutely agree with that.
And the rain did too. That was like oppressive and it was crazy rain.
I don't know that being able to create atmosphere through set design flows over to being able to write a cohesive plot.
I mean, maybe. It's just, there's something there.
Yeah, it is very possible. Now, I did read a couple of reviews actually, that wanted to interpret this movie as allegory or as metaphor for the Japanese invasion of South Korea.
Yeah, I heard about
that. And, other people say the director has never said that this is true. The director, in fact, has said other things that are the exact opposite, basically, like that there is no deep metaphor to it in that sense, that it's much more a religious...
It's a lot of religion
philosophical kind of movie that he was trying to make. But... once you've created something, people can see in it what they will, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said for the things that these people have seen, in the sense that, the disease that is working its way through this village looks an awful lot like syphilis and is decimating the village. And these are things, they're pointing out that when South Korea was invaded, there was a lot of raping and
which is something the Japanese man was doing
theoretically,
possibly in a dream.
like he was being accused of that.
Yes.
At least.
We saw like a story being told of that.
Right. And that like the fact that the policemen, they kind of represented the country, the nation of South Korea, and that they were unable to stop this Japanese man from doing the things they thought he was doing.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it does fit pretty well.
And one of them in particular talked about how the only character who seemed to have any real self-determination or like backbone, basically, was the girl's grandmother.
Oh.
She and the Japanese man were from the same generation, but that they never confronted each other.
No, they
that
did
it never addressed that, but that she was the one who was like, this is happening. We're going to go get a shaman. This is, she knew what was going on, but then it wasn't trusted that she could do it. Like the person who was writing that review wanted her to have a bigger role in the story because.
And she didn't.
Then she would have been able to basically save everybody.
Yeah.
Although she wanted to bring the shaman in, and it turned out the shaman was in league with the devil, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can safely say that that's like kind of clearly shown at the end, which is I don't even know. There's so many confusing parts and conflicting parts. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
I mean, I think it would be very possible to look at what happens in this movie and find connections to things from South Korea's past and the political climate and everything like that. And I think even if the director didn't intend for those things to happen, one of the things that I read about was that he is South Korean and he is Protestant. Mm-hmm. So like that he is creating this movie that has very Christian overtones and
which it clearly does.
Philosophy, right? It's talking about the devil, but that he culturally is South Korean. And so for him to, when he talks about it, he says, "Oh, I made the devil a Japanese guy because it's an outsider, it's a foreign element, but also it's hard to see, he wanted it to be a culture that looked similar to South Korea so that he could talk about the difficulties of identifying good and bad, right? Like he was talking about, when someone's attacking your castle and if you can't tell who's good and who's bad and whatever. But at the same time, having grown up in a South Korea that had been invaded by Japan, how much internalized racism was he dealing with that made him decide, I need someone to be the devil. I know. How about this Japanese guy?
And then at the end of the movie, let's totally make him the devil. Like, the devil. Right.
I mean, so for the first 2/3 of the movie, I was like, oh, this movie's super racist. Like, the Japanese guy is, they're spreading all of these terrible rumors about him, making all these assumptions because he's Japanese. And if it's really him who's doing it, like, then the movie is just straight up racist. Then
that whole time I thought they're not going to do that. He's going to turn out to have been a good guy all along, and he's trying to fix everything, and they're not understanding.
Exactly. And I was like, okay. Because for a little while, it felt like that was the way it was going to go. And I'm like, okay, so then this movie is making a point about racism. These characters are straight up racist, but the movie is making a point about how they are wrong. Okay. Then,
and then
he was just the devil. And
he was the devil.
And now I'm like, oh, I don't know. Because one way to look at it is the Japanese guy was the devil. That's pretty racist. Another way to look at it is the devil decided to take on the form of a Japanese guy within this South Korean rural community because he knew that the people who lived in this community had this systemic mistrust.
Yeah.
And that they would react the way that they reacted. Like,
yeah, of course, it might have been nice to go undercover a little bit and sow some seeds of destruction, but I guess maybe not.
I mean, he was also in the shaman, though, I think, or was working with the shaman.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that relationship was or any of that. And the shaman, he appeared to be a normal guy. Like, when the lovely ghost lady made him vomit all over the place, he ran home and was like trying to ritualize himself and make himself safe. And then he saw a crow and freaked out. And like, we were seeing that ourselves. So that wasn't like anything he was faking. So he really was scared of her. Like,
So here's the thing, though. Remember at that point, I was like, which one of them is evil?
Yeah.
I had an inherent mistrust of him. And I don't think it was just because plot-wise it would make sense
like
for him.
you said, it's because he looked like Eddie from Grounded for Life.
Yes. I mean, there is a certain level of automatic mistrust I have for people with men with short ponytails who wear turtlenecks.
Yes, turtlenecks are just evil.
Now, I couldn't tell there, and I think that means it was really well done, that scene. That as I was watching it, I'm like, ooh, either she is evil and attacking him, or he is evil and he can't withstand the purity that she was.
Yeah.
And it seems like all of the interpretations that I read, whichever direction they went, agreed that this woman represented purity in some way. Or at the very least, some of the ones who were talking about it in a political way were saying that she represents the comfort women, which like, I guess is not so much purity as
very pure.
Like innocence destroyed, right? Like young girls who were taken as sex slaves basically for the invaders. But no matter what, everybody seems to agree that she was definitely good by the end of the movie.
That part, I really liked how it did that, how for the entire movie, you're just swerving back and forth who's good and who's bad, and you don't understand for sure until like the last scene where he's like, look, I'm the devil. See the horns?
Right? And even then, I was like, wait, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Is this priest having a hallucination because he's racist and thinks Japanese people are the devil? Like, what is... But I think it really was the devil. And even then, with the shaman, I'm assuming that he was in league with the devil because he also had a camera.
Yeah, but he pulled a lot of tricks that made it look like he was on the other side, so maybe they weren't tricks. Maybe he was. Maybe he's taking pictures to help the lady out.
So the interpretation that was the whole political thing talked about how he represented the South Koreans who accepted Japan as an invasion and joined up with them for their own personal gain. Like, there was a part of me when he was doing his huge, elaborate ritual with, like, tables full of fruit and 3 huge sides of meat and fires and a totem pole and a 4-piece band and, like, everything. There was a part of me that was going, that's nonsense. Like, he knows it's nonsense. He's faking this elaborate display so that he can get $10,000 off of this guy.
And that scene was so, like, I don't know how to interpret that scene because as far as I can tell, his ritual was actually killing the Japanese man, which doesn't make any sense.
It was definitely suggested that that was the case.
And that's what he said was happening. And he's like, hey, you interrupted it. You're dumb. And they shouldn't have interrupted it. Would have been great. Except he was actually working with him, so he probably wasn't trying to kill him. Although also the lady said later that he can't be killed. He would be fine anyway, which we kind of saw because he got smashed by a car and was fine.
Yeah. So it makes me think, though, that we were led to believe that the death hex that the shaman was doing was affecting the Japanese man / devil, and it really wasn't. Like, whatever happened to him was a part of the ritual he was doing, which was he was trying to raise that guy who...
trying to make a zombie.
Yeah, he was trying to raise that one guy from the dead, and it would just, like that was physically exhausting to him, and...
Yeah, that kind of makes some sense. But then he hung out with the rock-throwing girl, who was purity and light, and like I don't know that they were friendly, but they were like running together through the woods.
So I believe he was chasing her through the forest.
You think?
So, and like the point where they
on his broken leg,
right? And after he was like, he collapsed and then he was curled up in his blanket and she showed up. Yeah. It seemed more like she showed up and was watching him rather than like hanging out with him. I mean,
that was definitely a known purpose. Anyway, you can see from what we're all saying that this is total mystery to us. We don't know what's going on.
So this movie is definitely a horror film.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific.
It is also definitely a tragedy.
Yeah, it's so... when when the ghost lady has him like in the back alley and is like, don't go until the rooster crows 3 times. And he's like, I don't know. That's 1. I don't know. That's 2. Okay, I'm leaving. Like,
but we didn't know either.
No,
but at
we
that
didn't.
point,
That's
it is
part of
very unclear whether she is good or evil.
Right.
And so he's like being told by the shaman to go home because his daughter needs him.
Yeah.
And he's being told by the rock throwing girl that he needs to stay here because she had set a trap for the demon.
Yeah.
And she's like, when the rooster crows the 3rd time, the demon will have tripped the trap. Like, he'll be caught.
Yeah.
So he finally is like, I have to go back home. I have to get to my daughter. He goes back. He walks onto the property and the rooster crows for the 3rd time because he tripped the trap.
I see. Yeah. I was just thinking it was a timing issue, but yeah.
Nope.
That was the sound.
So he trips the trap, the rooster crows, but because it's him, then his daughter, who is possessed and has been through much of the movie, which is, what the tragedy of the movie really is. She has killed her mother and her grandmother and I guess kills him too, although he looks remarkably uninjured as he dies at the end of the movie. Yeah.
He also, I got the impression, I don't feel like this is borne out by what we see, but it seemed like, the shaman comes in to take pictures of the corpses. I feel like he played dead for the picture, and then he was like, don't worry, Daddy's gonna take care of this, and was gonna get up and get going places, but clearly from the fade out, he was not going anywhere.
No.
He was wrong about whether Daddy was going to fix anything.
See, and I think that's the true tragedy of the film, is that he so desperately, he is
awful.
driven by his fear and his hatred and his need to avenge his daughter and protect his daughter to do terrible things. Like, he is a policeman and he gathers up a posse of villagers and goes up to kill this Japanese guy.
Which that feels like something important to the message of the movie. I don't know what, but this idea, that's the Japanese man, racist posse hunting him down.
Oh, yeah. I think
that's significant.
To me, it talked about how easy it is for your internal biases and those things that you are raised with and don't even recognize, how easily they can be turned into hatred and the willingness to kill somebody who is other.
And that's why it's so messed up that he was the devil in the end. I was like, okay, but you were right. Good job.
Right? There's a little bit of, yes, you should be careful about those dangerous Japanese people in this movie, which I don't think was what it was trying to say, but it was one of those things where, I've critiqued other movies, American movies, much more harshly on this, where they either don't address the message that they're causing for people with internal biases, or they address it in an inappropriate or not quite accurate way, or not quite careful enough way. And I have a hard time being too harsh on this because I don't understand the internal biases that are being triggered here.
Yeah.
But I do think they were being triggered, and I'm afraid that some people might watch this movie with some of those same internal biases and come away with the idea that, the devil might be inside Japanese people.
Yeah. You never know.
But I do think that he tragically failed in all of his many, many attempts to protect his daughter. And she is now a multi-murderer. And I don't think she's any longer possessed by this demon. I think from what we've seen in the movie, the demon possesses people, makes them kill their whole families, and then leaves them.
And that's why they're always committing suicide after.
And also, each one of them afterwards was, just propped up on the porch outside of the room where they had just killed everybody and just, zombified. And I think that's because there's nothing left in them. They've just been destroyed.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's also a very surface kind of reading to this whole movie. If you ignore all the details and you just go, well, not all the details. They talk about how, why did this happen to my daughter? And he's like, well, he's just fishing. He threw out bait and that's what he caught. It doesn't matter. It's totally random. She just happened to get caught. And that, combined with the fact that he totally failed to save her and it was so tragic, is kind of like well, that's life. That's the whole message. That's one potential whole message to the movie, is just, it happens.
And that's life.
That's life.
That takes us back to that philosophical religious question too, which is, why does God let bad things happen? Well, he just does, is sort of what this movie is saying.
Just does.
Because the devil is real and the devil is fishing for souls. And if you get caught by the devil, you get caught by the devil.
Hey,
and that's just the way it goes. If you get caught by
the devil, God will hold your hand for a couple minutes and be like, come on, wait for okay, go. I tried. Yeah,
it definitely has what seems to me like a very fatalistic sort of message to it. And it's the sort of message that would, if I had faith, would lead me to be like, yeah, I think I'm not gonna have that faith anymore. Like, this doesn't make any sense. But, you had said that this director made this movie after he had experienced a lot of death of loved ones in his life. And so, it's him grappling with that question of, why does God let bad things happen?
Yeah.
And apparently the answer he came up with is,
why not?
'Cause bad things happen. Like, he just does. There's no underlying, like, these bad things had to happen in order for this greater good to happen.
That's what people always try, and it just does not pan out.
And there wasn't even bad things were happening to bad people. Like, I think Jang-gu did a lot of terrible things. Like, he eventually got to the point where I wouldn't have been surprised in a religious story if he had been punished for the things he had done. But he got that way while trying to fight the bad thing that had already happened to him.
So then you think about the bait and the trap. He was entrapped into this. So it's like entrapment. Like, he's like, oh, she got sick before I started doing this stuff. So that's not why, he tried to argue. Like, well, yeah, she got sick to entice you into trying to do bad things, because if you were really good, you wouldn't have done anything bad. It's a terrible crime.
This reminds me of a thing that I saw recently, talking about a city where rehab centers that give out methadone are closed on Sundays, so they give out double doses on Saturday. And then police officers pretend to be drug addicts in desperate need, and they approach people who have recently been given their double dosage of methadone, and they ask them to give them their extra dose, which is illegal. And then they do, because they are trying to help somebody, and then they arrest them because they have committed a crime by doing it. It's exactly that same thing, where they are enticed into doing the thing that they were always going to be punished for.
And that brings to mind the director. When he's been interviewed about this movie, he says, I began to wonder about the nature of God. What if he was not always good? If the ghost lady was doing this entrapment instead of the devil, which makes sense because that's who would be giving you a test, then yeah, she's not really being good, is she? It's kind of terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all very complex and convoluted, and I do kind of stand by my original statement that I think while there are parts to it that can make sense and you can carve some sort of cohesiveness out of it, I think in its entirety, I don't know that there's a storyline that means something all the way through, where it's consistent all the way through.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Before recording this, I looked up what I rated The Witch from a few years back, because it had a very similar feel to me, and I gave that movie a 4.5. And I think I am going to rate this movie on a similar scale, in the sense that there was so much to like about how it was done, so much to like about the production values and the artistry and the atmosphere of this movie, that I enjoyed watching it, even though I felt like there was something fundamentally missing from the storyline. Like that the plot of it was broken in some way. Even though it was almost 3 hours long, at the end, when I didn't feel the resolution I was looking for, or I didn't get the answers that I really wanted to get in order to feel like I knew what the storytellers were trying to tell, I still didn't feel like I had wasted my time. At the end of Open House, I enjoyed Open House to the very end, where they were like, oh, you're looking for an ending? Ha ha, no. And that made me dislike the entire movie. Like, I was so angry about that. in this case, when I realized that he was dying, it faded out and it was over, and I was like, I do not know what just happened. I did not have that same anger reaction where I was like, I just sacrificed 3 hours of my life to this.
It's a lot more hours, too.
Yes. So, I should have been angrier, but it was so enjoyable to watch for so many other reasons that I was okay with that. And I think I had that same reaction to The Witch. I don't think I liked the story of The Witch very much, but the way it was told and the visuals in particular were just gorgeous. Mm-hmm. I do agree with a lot of the reviews that I read that said that this movie could use some more editing. Like I said earlier, like killing your darlings, it's a thing. Yeah. There were probably a few darlings that could have been taken out of this movie, and it still would have been a perfectly good movie. Probably would have been a better movie. Mm-hmm. But overall, I liked it. I am going to give this movie 4 jars of soy sauce out of 5.
All right. I, too, enjoyed watching this movie. I am, however, the only person in America that did not like The Vavitch.
Yep.
I gave it a 2.5. Really didn't enjoy it, but I do see that it was made well, like very impressive cinematography and just the performances and all.
Do you feel the same similarities between that movie and this movie?
I don't know if I see that. It's been such a long time. I don't know if I should be seeing that or not. So, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't understand this movie, but I do really feel like there's something there that the director, writers, everybody was putting in there and was creating, and I just didn't get it. And, that doesn't always happen. Some movies, I don't understand it. And my impression is, there's a reason I'm not understanding this garbage. So it's definitely a different kind of feeling. And so for me, I felt that in there and was like, there's something. Mm-hmm. It was too long, however. And like you said, they could have definitely trimmed it down and maybe it would have made more sense with less red herrings and confusing parts. So in the end, though, I really liked it. I loved how it looked and just a lot of the stuff. Like the little girl was a great actress. Like she did awesome.
I thought she did very well.
That's not normal at all. That's very strange.
She was terrifying.
Yeah. And all the people in there were good and it was just really cool. So I enjoyed it, and I will give it 4 soy sauce jugs out of 5. But in mine, the crow is in a different jug than it is for you, because we came at it from different directions.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that we gave it the exact same score, but for basically opposite reasons.
Yeah, and what I think is also interesting and sad is, A, that this entire rating section got deleted the first time.
It was so good. And now it's very lame.
It failed to record the first time, and so now we just sound lame. And that's because we're sad. But B, we're also very sad to be leaving you all. This is day 31. It's over.
It's over. This is the end. It's not actually the end, though.
What? It's not?
Because I know that on Halloween... Spoilers, guys, it's not actually Halloween as we're recording this. You are going to sit there and watch as many horror movies as you can during the whole day.
Yes, my favorite experience.
And I very specifically say you, because as much as I can watch a horror movie a day for a month and enjoy it, I cannot watch 9 horror movies back to back to back to back to back in one day. So tomorrow, I will be back asking you questions about the additional Halloween marathon that you have all by yourself.
And it's going to be good. It's going to be so good.
It's going to be so good. It's going to be so bad it's good.
Oh, I hope to watch a lot of terrible ones, yes. So, we'll see you back for that. But otherwise, I'm afraid Halloween is over, folks.
Wah, wah, wah.
Maybe we'll see you next year.
Does that mean it's Christmas now?
It's not Christmas.
Oh.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. It is day 31.
Oh no, it's Halloween.
And we are doing our final Hamumu. I can never get all of these H words in the right order. Whatever. It is day 31.
Oh no!
And we are doing our final
Oh no!
Hamumu home. Damn it.